All right, let's jump right in. We're going to talk about this invisible force that honestly runs our entire world. It's why things stop, why they go, and it's even the reason you can hold your phone right now without it just slipping out of your hand. Yep, we're talking about friction. And to really get our heads around it, let's kick things off with a super simple question. I mean, think about it. You kick a soccer ball, you give it a good push, and it rolls for a while. But it never rolls forever, does it? Something is always working against it, slowing it down until it just stops. What is that something? And then, of course, there's the total opposite, right? The classic cartoon moment. You step on a banana peel and whoosh, your feet are gone from under you. It feels like the complete opposite problem, doesn't it? Like the force that's supposed to be there just vanished. But here's the kicker. The exact same force is the star player in both of these situations. That force, the one responsible for both stopping the ball and making you slip, is called friction. At its very heart, it's a force that opposes motion. It's this constant presence, making our world work in ways we can actually predict. So let's break down what that really means. So what is friction, really? Well, the textbook definition says it's a force that opposes the relative motion between two surfaces that are touching. Now, the key words there are contact. The surfaces have to be physically touching. And opposes, it always pushes back against whatever way you're trying to move. Let's make this really simple. Picture you're trying to push a heavy box across the floor. You're pushing it to the right. As you're pushing that box to the right, you feel a resistance, right? That resistance is the force of friction, and it's pushing back to the left. It's like a constant tug of war. And if you decided to push the box to the left instead, friction would instantly switch sides and start pushing to the right. It's always playing for the other team. But that just brings up another question. Where does this invisible pushback actually come from? I mean, it's not magic. To find the answer, we have to go where our eyes can't see. We gotta zoom in, way in. And this is where things get really cool, because it kind of shatters what we think we see every day. You might look at a polished table or a sheet of ice and think, wow, that's perfectly smooth. But if you put it under a powerful microscope, it looks more like a rugged mountain range. So when you put two surfaces on top of each other, all those microscopic peaks and valleys, those irregularities, they just crash into each other and get stuck. They interlock. That feeling of friction, that's literally the force you need to break those tiny bonds and drag the mountains of one surface over the mountains of the other. And it just makes sense, right? The rougher the surface, the bigger those mountains, and the more force it's going to take. Now, here's a fun wrinkle. Not all friction is created equal. You know this instinctively. Just think about trying to push a super heavy sofa across the room. That first push, just to get it to budge, that's the hardest part, right? That is static friction. That's the force you're fighting when all those little mountains and valleys are completely locked in. But once you get it going, it's a little easier to keep it sliding. That's because you're now dealing with sliding friction. The surfaces are kind of bouncing and skipping over each other, so they don't have a chance to lock back in so deeply. The big takeaway here is it's always harder to get something started than it is to keep it moving. And all this brings us to the central paradox of friction. We spend so much of our time and energy trying to reduce it or overcome it. But the truth is, we absolutely could not live without it. It is, at the exact same time, our best friend and our worst enemy. Okay, let's start with why friction is our friend. The only reason you can walk across a room without slipping is because of the friction between your shoes and the floor. It's the grip. When you write with a pencil, friction is literally scraping graphite onto the paper. It's why nails stay in walls, why cars can stop when you hit the brakes, and why entire buildings don't just slide apart. Seriously, without friction, our world would be just an uncontrollable, slippery mess. But there's a dark side. That same rubbing action wears out our shoes, our tires, and the moving parts in every machine. And that rubbing creates heat. When a machine gets hot, that's just wasted energy, literally disappearing into the air. And of course, it's the reason pushing that heavy sofa is such a workout. So yeah, it's a constant battle. So if friction is both essential and a huge problem, what do we do? Well, for pretty much all of human history, we've been getting really good at mastering this force, learning how to crank it up when we need more grip and dial it way down when we need things to move nice and smooth. So, when do we need more friction? For safety and control, of course. We actually engineer things to be rougher. The treads on your shoes and the grooves on a car tire, those are there specifically to increase the surface area and give you a better grip on the ground. It's friction by design.
Okay, but what about the opposite? What if we want less friction? Well, for that, we have lubricants. A lubricant is basically any substance that can get in between two surfaces and form a super thin, slippery layer. It basically keeps those microscopic mountains from ever touching, letting them glide right past each other instead of grinding down. And you see these everywhere: oil in an engine, grease on a bike chain, even something like graphite powder in a sticky lock. And in some really cool high-tech stuff, like an air hockey table, the lubricant is literally a cushion of air. The goal is always the same, though: just keep the surfaces separated. Now, lubricants are great and all, but they really can't hold a candle to what might be the single greatest invention for conquering friction in human history: the wheel. See, the genius of the wheel is that it completely changes the game. It replaces that difficult sliding friction with something way, way weaker: rolling friction. Instead of having to drag an entire surface across another one, you're just gently putting down one tiny point of the wheel at a time. That's why pulling a heavy suitcase on wheels is easy, but trying to just slide that same suitcase is a nightmare. The wheel was a total game changer. So far, we've pretty much only talked about solid things rubbing against other solid things. But friction is everywhere. It also happens when an object tries to move through a liquid or even just through the air. You see, liquids and gases are technically called fluids, and they have their own special type of friction. This fluid friction has its own name. We call it drag. You've definitely felt this. It's the force pushing against your hand when you stick it out the window of a moving car, or that feeling of resistance when you try to run in a swimming pool. That's the fluid, the air or the water, pushing back on you. And just like with regular friction, we've figured out ways to fight drag. The biggest weapon in our arsenal is shape. By designing things to be streamlined, we help the air or water flow smoothly around them. This cuts down on that resistance and saves a massive amount of energy. So, where we get this brilliant idea for streamlined shapes? You guessed it, we stole it from nature. Nature has been perfecting this for millions of years. I mean, just look at a bird or a fish. Their bodies are perfectly evolved to slice through air and water with minimum effort. So, when our engineers design a supercar, a submarine, or a jet airplane, they're really just copying from the ultimate design experts. So we'll end with this riddle. It's a force that sometimes helps motion happen and other times tries to stop it completely. But no matter what, it always opposes the relative motion between two things. So what is it? It's friction, of course. That invisible, two-sided force that shapes pretty much every single thing that moves in our world. Thanks for tuning in to this explainer.